Yes.
Redress scheme for this purpose. It's taken a while to get the details in place, but as of today we're now live. So I'm just going to hand over to officers who will give the details of exactly how it will work.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you for no more than 5 minutes because what I'm going to say is probably I'm not the person you want to hear from, but it will perhaps help you think about some of the questions you might want to ask. Okay, so we've launched a new scheme because there was a previous historic abuse redress scheme that was just focused on residential care. The reason that we've launched this new extended scheme is because the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry tells us more about harm and abuse suffered in foster care and at the Shen. 1945 is the start date because that's the start date, that reflects the start date of the original Historic Abuse Redress Scheme, and 2005 is the end date because in 2005 the provisions of the new Children's Law Jersey 2002 start to kick in at that point. It offers both financial redress and also an apology. Under the old scheme people just got given money, but in this case they will actually be given a letter of apology as well. The scheme's got two parts to it. The first part relates to the Shen, and this is redress that is based on the numbers of nights or weekends that a person spent at the Shen. It doesn't include the children who were there just during the day and were on school register but didn't stay there at night. And the number of nights that they were there will dictate the level of payment. In addition to that, there's an additional bolt-on payment if while you were at the Shen you were subject to inappropriate or unlawful physical abuse, but which did not cause significant injury or long-term harm. So that's good. It's difficult to use the term low level, but it's relatively low level of physical abuse, so kind of manhandling by staff. If you suffered more than low level abuse, you can apply for Part 2. So Part 2 of the scheme, and this broadly mirrors the original Historic Abuse Redress Scheme, relates to sexual physical abuse in a children's home, in foster care, or in the Shen where it was significant. The payment bands are the same as the Historic Abuse Redress Scheme, but the amount of compensation has been uplifted, and that is because the original HARS 1 scheme was launched in 2011. We've uplifted payments in line with inflation since 2011. Okay. Oh, sorry, going the wrong way. There we go. There will be people who apply to Part 2 of the scheme may also be awarded up to £3,000, which they can use to purchase their own therapy or their own treatment that they use to help them deal with and to manage the effects of the abuse they suffered. And that money will be held by the Government of Jersey, and it will be paid to the claimants to reimburse them for any costs for any care that they've purchased. There will be an independent panel. This is a new feature of this scheme. So there will be an independent panel whose job it will be to make recommendations to SAM as to whether or not the scheme criteria should be amended. It is likely that we will receive some applications that are on the margins of the criteria, that don't quite fall within the criteria, but where the redress team who are determining the applications believe that that application should be considered. So in that case, the independent panel will be asked to consider whether we should amend and broaden the screen criteria to include applications of that particular nature. There is an appeals process, and this is the same as under the HARS 1 scheme, that if you get offered, if a claimant gets offered an amount of redress and they are not happy, they may appeal, and that appeal will be processed by UK counsel. It will go to someone in the UK who will review the amount of compensation offered. And that can obviously, the amount of compensation can go up and the amount of compensation could go down. As you will probably all know, under the old Historic Abuse Redress Scheme, there was an awful lot of public disquiet about the amount of money that was spent on the overheads of the scheme that went to lawyers, as opposed to the amount of money that went to claimants. So when we went to Council of Ministers gave us a really clear instruction, and that instruction was this scheme is about claimants, it's not about lawyers making lots of money. So we've devised the scheme in a slightly different way. So claimants, lawyers' fees will be fixed rate. So depending on whether or not you're making a Part 1 application or a Part 2 application, there'll be a fixed rate for the claimants' lawyers, and there will be additional bolts on depending whether or not there's a successful appeal, or, for example, if a person's detained, or extra medical information is required. Instead of using external lawyers, the Law Officers Department have set up a bespoke redress scheme who will determine the applications and make recommendations as to the amount of compensation, the amount of redress that should be paid to individuals. If an applicant is uncomfortable with the Law Officers Department being involved in that assessment of an application, there is an ability for that particular application to be determined by an external lawyer. Okay? So that is a quick factual run through of how the scheme is going to work. Has anyone got any questions about that?
Yeah, what was your name?
My name's Ruth Johnson.
Johnson.
Johnson, yeah. Any other questions? No?
I've got lots if you want them, but
Well,
you have
it's about
lot.
the facts of it, I can do it, but if they're about the important stuff, that's over to Sam.
Well, everything's important, but did the care inquiry panel have any input into the creation of this scheme, the actual physics?
No.
They didn't.
No, they didn't.
They haven't seen it.
But they obviously are aware of it. But what we did do is we did work very closely with Alan Collins, who is the solicitor who represented the greater majority of the applicants to the original HARS scheme. So we worked very closely with him in terms of designing the scheme and how it worked.
There's 1,000 questions, but is there a definition of what is a lawyer?
Oh, is there a definition? Oh, I don't know. That's one for a lawyer.
Yeah. Yes, there is. It's set out in the terms and conditions which are available online.
Okay.
Yeah. But you don't need to use a lawyer to apply to the scheme. You can do it yourself. Yeah. And that's really important. Claimants don't have to go through lawyers to do it. Okay. That's me then. Thank you.